Hello, beautifuls. My name is Quavia. I'm the creator of JuJu Thyme, and in today's challenge of the 12 days of Yule, it is now December 26th, and our task is to talk about death and rebirth in any way that we choose, basically. And in the African and African diasporic traditions, practices, indigenous knowledge, there is a plethora of things that I don't know, just wanting to talk about. But at the end, I decided that the best way is through a tale. Oral tradition was and still is a very integral part of African diasporic practices, and there's so much wisdom and beauty and knowledge, and as an individual that is a student of Afro mysticism, these stories give me so much life. And so I am going to read you a story. I'm going to read you a tale about the flying Africans. And it's a beautiful tale. It's a sad tale, but it's also filled with so much mysticism and magic, and I absolutely adore it. I adore it. So let's just get started right into the tale, and afterwards we'll come back and have a little chat. So enjoy. I heard about the flying man up in Arkansas at Jonesboro. The polices went up to him, and the faster they walked, the faster he walked, until he just spread his arms and sailed right on off. They never did catch him, said he was faster than the planes. They told about him all through the South, in Alabama, Mississippi, Arkansas. All God's children had wings. Once all Africans could fly like birds. But owing to their many transgressions, their wings were taken away. There remained, here and there in the sea islands and out-of-the-way places in the low country, some who had been overlooked and had retained the power of flight, though they looked like other men. There was a cruel master on one of the sea islands who worked his people till they died. When they died, he bought others to take their places. These also he killed with overwork in the burning summer sun through the middle hours of the day, although this was against the law. One day, when all the worn-out Negroes were dead of overwork, he bought of a broker in the town a company of native Africans just brought into the country and put them at once to work in the cotton field. He drove them hard. They went to work at sunrise and did not stop until dark. They were driven with unsparing harshness all day long, men, women, and children. There was no pause for rest during the unendurable heat of the midsummer noon, though trees were plenty and near. But through the hardest hours, when fair plantations gave their Negroes rest, this man's driver pushed the work along without a moment's stop for breath until all grew weak with heat and thirst. There was a woman, a young woman among them who had recently born a child. It was her first. She had not fully recovered from bearing and should not have been sent out to the field until her strength had come back. She had her child with her, as the other woman had, astraddled on her hip or piggyback. The baby cried. She spoke to quiet it. The driver could not understand her words. She took her breast with her hand and threw it over her shoulder that the child might suck and be content. Then she went back to chopping knot grass, but being very weak and sick, with the great heat, she stumbled, slipped, and fell. The driver struck her with his lash until she rose and staggered on. She spoke to an old man near her, the oldest man of them all, tall and strong, with a forked beard. He replied, but the driver could not understand what they said. Their talk was strange to him. She returned to work, but in a little while she fell again. Again, the driver lashed her until she got to her feet. Again, she spoke to the old man, but he said, "Not yet, daughter. Not yet." So she went on working, though she was very ill. Soon, she stumbled and fell again. But when the driver came running with his lash to drive her on with her work, she turned to the old man and asked, "Is it time yet, Daddy?" He answered, "Yes, daughter, the time has come. Go, and peace be with you." And he stretched out his arms toward her. With that, she leaped straight up into the air and was gone like a bird, flying over field and wood. The driver, the overseer, ran after her as far as the edge of the field, but she was gone, high over their heads, over the fence, and over the top of the woods, gone, with her baby astraddled of her hip, sucking at her breast. Then the driver hurried the rest to make up for her loss. And the sun was very hot indeed, so hot that soon a man fell down. The overseer himself lashed him to his feet. As he got up from where he had fallen, the old man called to him in an unknown tongue. My grandfather told me the words that he said, but it was a long time ago, and I have forgotten them. But when he had spoken, the man turned and laughed at the overseer and leaped up into the air and was gone, like a gull flying over field and wood. Soon, another man fell. The driver lashed him. He turned to the old man. The old man cried out to him and stretched out his arms as he had done for the other two. And he, like them, leaped up and was gone through the air, flying like a bird over field and wood. Then the overseer cried to the driver, and the master cried to them both, "Beat the old devil, he is the doer." The overseer and the driver ran at the old man with lashes ready, and the master ran too with a picket pulled from the fence to beat the life out of the old man who had made those Negroes fly. But the old man laughed in their faces and said something loudly to all the Negroes on the field, the new Negroes and the old Negroes. And as he spoke to them, they all remembered what they had forgotten and recalled the power which once had been theirs. Then all the Negroes, old and new, stood up together. The old man raised his hands, and they all leaped up into the air with a great shout, and in a moment were gone, flying like a flock of crows over the field, over the fence, and over the top of the wood, and behind them flew the old man. The men went clapping their hands, and the women went singing, And those who had children gave them their breasts, and the children laughed and sucked as their mothers flew and were not afraid. The master, the overseer, and the driver looked after them as they flew, beyond the wood, beyond the river, miles on miles, until they passed beyond the last rim of the world and disappeared in the sky like a handful of leaves. They were never seen again. Where they went, I don't know. I never was told, nor what it was that the old man said, that I have forgotten. But as he went over the last fence, he made a sign in the master's face and cried, "Kuliba, Kuliba." I don't know what that means. But if I could only find the old wood sawyer, he could tell you more, for he was there at the time and saw the Africans fly away with their women and children. He is an old man, over 90 years of age, and remembers a great many strange things. Well, that was the tale of the Flying Africans. God, that tale I find that tale to be so beautiful. And in the conversation around death and rebirth, at least an aspect of it that I think I will speak on is the aspect of remembrance. I feel that when it comes to me in my practice, the more that I continue down the path of remembrance, a remembrance of who I am, the people that I come from, remembrance of my power from since the beginning of time, I feel that I am getting closer to remembering those words that the old man said. And this is a process of rebirth. And I think for me and others who are practitioners of African and African Diasporic traditions and practices, with me, with Hoodoo, it is very, very much a cultural African Diasporic practice that is allowing me that rebirth. It's allowing me that rebirth in understanding death as well, you know? And so for others like myself, there's a reclaiming, which is also a death, right? There's a death of colonized mindset. There's a death of who we are told we are, who we are shown we are. You know, it's a death of what we were never, you know? And there's a rebirth. I feel there's a rebirth of the power, rebirth of the ancestors, because they're not dead. This death and rebirth are one and the same, you know? So they're not gone because I'm here. They're not gone because they're everywhere. And this rebirth of remembrance, this rebirth of this reclaiming, I think it is a rebirth that is necessary in general, you know, to not be afraid of ourselves when we look in the mirror. At least myself, I can only speak for myself, of course, but to look in the mirror and not be afraid or ashamed of anything that I see when I look in the mirror, you know? And there's such a connection when it comes to, because my practice at its foundation is ancestral based, you know, working with my elevated ancestors, but also the ancestors that are seeking elevation. You know, perhaps they were not the best, but wherever they are, they're seeking to be better, to do better. And because we're all connected with my rebirth of who I am, where I come from, the power that is innately mine, there's a connection that is also rebirthing them as well. You know, there's in one of the days of the challenge, you talk about the spirits that you work with. So I guess I'll talk more of that. But there's such a deep connection to, when I feel joy, it's their joy. When I have abundance, it's their abundance. So there is inherently a constant rebirth and a constant remembrance back to our core selves before anyone told any of us who we were, or who we ought to be or should be, or XYZ. It's nonsense. Utter nonsense. Anyway, so that is the aspect of death and rebirth that I suppose I wanted to speak on, because yeah, my practice, the years that I've been doing it now, goodness, I feel like I'm close. Maybe one day when I'm an old woman with long gray locks and filled up with all my tattoos, and I'll remember those words. And I like to imagine that I can speak those words and allow others to remember who they are, and just spread my arms, say those words, and we can go. You know, we can just fly. So anyway, that is, I don't know. That's my thoughts that I wanted to share on death and rebirth. My goodness, I feel like also on a personal level, I feel like if you were to have met me, I don't know, even 10 years ago, I look at pictures of myself and I know it's me, you know, I see me, but then it's also, like she's not gone, she's safe within me, but there's a rebirthing that had to happen, a death and a rebirthing that had to happen. And yeah, so I feel like, you know, we die multiple times in one lifetime. Well, at least if you're, well, my personal opinion, if you're doing it right. Anyway, that is what I wanted to speak on, beautifuls, and I thank you for listening to this tale. I thank you for receiving it. And yeah. Thank you so much for being here. And until the next one, truth and love.